Dallas 911, John speaking. What's location emergency?
This is headquarters. Somebody just shot out the front glass. We need some elements up here.
Lima 320, all the gunfire was coming through the front door, and we do not believe we have anybody hit.
Still shoot the guys, shoot the officers arriving. Be careful on the approach.
Yes, we're being shot at headquarters.
Hey, somebody check that van out front. This is their automatic rifle fire and their target officers approaching.
Lima 320, make sure all elements are very cautious.
Our rifle come across the street.
Your crossfire, guys. Let's crossfire. We have an active shooter with a high-power rifle at the front.
Lead up to the right here. North Malamar.
Where one do it? It's going to be 10 o'clock.
Spike strip, he hit the spike strip. Driver's side wheels have gone flat on this vehicle. West of the Jack in the Box, that's where he stopped at. Shot fired. Shot fired. I have a 50 cal ready. We're on the north side here by the bank. A code 100 has been authorized at 148. A code 100 has been authorized at 148 if you have effective shots.
Of course, my eyes are starting to play tricks on me because I've been on the glass for the last 4.5 hours. So constantly looking through a magnified optic with one eye and nothing with the other eye, your mind starts playing little games with you. Kind of crushing headache because I can't focus. But like I said, I saw that first movement, focused in on it. Second movement, I'm like, damn, I think that's him. And about that time I got the magnification set up, sure enough, his whole face came straight up over the dashboard looking out the window, and then he was gone again. It was just a half a heartbeat. It was just a flash. And while I'm running all this through my head at Mach 2, the two primary instructors that ring true in my head were my first sniper instructors. And the one thing they always harped on was, don't be greedy. Quarter up your target, shoot center of mass. Whatever it is that you can see, shoot center of mass. Don't get greedy and take that perfect sniper shot for the head. Take your time, make your shot count, but take the biggest piece that you can see, which happens to be his chest.
And you have to remember that his technology was probably some of the most advanced that ever been deployed in the continental United States up to this time. I mean, this is stuff that was going off in Iraq and Afghanistan. But I said earlier, he made just one minor mistake on his hardwire, and if he hadn't done that, he would have been a much, much tougher out. You know, we never picked the time, the place, or how any of this stuff is going to work. We just respond to it. You know, you can train, and it's not the same. But when you get on these hot deals like this, I'm telling you, this cat had unbelievable repertoire of possible skills that he could have done. And when you look back about how nobody was injured or killed, it's unbelievable. It really is. He had planned for everything except one thing he didn't plan for. 5-0. That was the only thing he didn't plan for. And that's what got us through on that day.
You're listening to the ATO Bridging the Divide podcast, brought to you by the Assist the Officer Foundation.
Since 1999, the ATO has given assistance to the first responder community, and now we want to give them a platform to hear their incredible stories.
We also want to hear the stories of the many people that support us.
Our community is small, but it is strong.
We have differences. We don't always agree, and we all make mistakes.
But together we can grow, we can heal.
And we can learn from those mistakes.
And together we can bridge the divide.
Prologue, June 2015. The Ford E-Series armored blue cargo van was purchased off eBay for $8,250. At one point, the bid increased from $6,000, then to $7,000, then $8,000, even though there were no competing offers. The van was described as a zombie apocalypse assault vehicle with gun ports capable of drive-by mowdowns and full armor bulletproof windows. The bumper was reinforced with steel tubing. The tactical sideboards were installed when you only need swords and axes for a drive-by zombie assault. The interior was equipped with bolted-down benches for easy access to its gun ports for maximum assault. This unique vehicle will leave the 30263 Georgia zip code and make a nearly 800-mile trek to meet its new home and its new destiny. From the moment it entered Dallas County, the fuse was lit, the stage was set, and the plan will unfold on June 13th, 2015, as it traveled to 1400 South Lamar to get its revenge. And this new vehicle of war will become a lonely tomb by sunrise. Weak people revenge. Strong people forgive. Intelligent people ignore. Albert Einstein. Welcome back, ATO family. This is Joe. Today I'm with Kent Wolverton, the great Danny Canetti, and two amazing co-hosts to discuss the events from Dallas Police Headquarters on June 13, 2015. This story you're about to hear is somewhat overlooked and lost in Dallas police history. The story and unfolding of events plays out like a Hollywood movie script. But this actually happened. It happened to our officers, to the city, and to the Dallas Police Department. The police response and actions taken that night were historically significant for American policing. To tell the story, we have people that were in the middle of it and helped write City of Dallas history and law enforcement history. It's the ATO's honor to welcome on retired Dallas SWAT operator Jude Braun and active Dallas SWAT member Keith Reeg. Jude Braun, Keith Reeg, welcome to the stage.
Thank you, sir.
Appreciate
First time y'all doing a podcast?
Yes, sir.
All right. Well,
Correct.
We'll ease you in.
Be gentle.
Yeah, very gentle.
Real quick, everyone has their phones on silent or vibrate.
Correct.
Judy, you have flip phone on? Oh, okay.
Flip
I don't
phone.
know how to do
It's
this,
old Motorola.
It's got a jitterbug.
It's a Razor, the original.
You might need to help him, Keith.
yeah, I think that's all. I'm not a millennial in technology, that's for sure.
Well, you are pretty good with some technology. I saw a picture of you in the back of the APC with a.
He can make an IED.
Okay.
Yeah, he can make an IED. He just can't put his phone on vibrate.
Yeah, that's, Danny hit it right on the head.
Yeah. All right, we're gonna finally tell the story of the 2015 attack on DPD headquarters. It was June 13th, 2015. Sadly, what happened a year later, I think, overshadows that event, and it was pretty historic. And a lot of reasons, somebody attacking major police headquarters with an assault rifle and basically an armored war wagon that he bought off eBay.
Yep.
And there's a lot of firsts that happened that day in law enforcement history. But there's a lot of people still in our department. I think that especially the new folks coming in, they get 2015 mixed up with what happened in 2016 and that tragedy. Because I've talked about the the headquarters attack to some people. And it's that, like civilians, they're non-police, non-first responders. They're like, oh, that's terrible. Those 5 officers were killed. I go, no, there was something different. There was a different incident that happened a year earlier. So the date is June 13, 2015, we're going to get to. But I want to start a little bit before that and give a little backstory on the suspect and what got him to that day. Are you ready to get into it?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Let's do it.
So I have a copy of an affidavit, and it goes back to April 30th of 2013. Suspect Boulware, he attacked his mother and also his uncle, and there were charges filed. And that's what kind of set this in motion with his anger towards police. And there was a child custody battle that ensued from this arrest. During the arrest, he was arrested in Paris, Texas, and he made several threats against schools and churches and his family. And the report shows that the incident began at the mother's house in May of 2013. Police said Boulware grabbed his mother around the neck with both of his hands, began choking her. Boulware's uncle tried to fight him off. He punched him a few times. The mother called 911, and he left. A warrant was issued by Dallas police, and he was arrested later in Paris, Texas. He was arrested by Lamar County sheriffs. He spent 21 days in jail for this offense. Because of his threats against schools and churches, he had some firearms that were seized during this by the sheriffs. Later on, the charges were dismissed in 2014. He then began like a custody battle for his child. The mother was trying to get custody of the child, and it just became really bitter. There was a family judge that was involved. He began making posts on her page. We have like an outline, some of the screenshots of the post. He's basically accusing her of blocking testimony on how the U.S. Navy, stationed down in Pensacola, Florida, used to solicit underage prostitutes for Vietnam. She is trying to block testimony on how I grew up around mafia and that the judge has been replacing him with Lori Hockett. He just made a bunch of wild posts on her page, and it led to the judge filing a harassment charge in 2015. According to the court records, a judge recently granted custody of his son to the mother after both he and the child's mother were determined not to be fit in sole possession of the son. After this, Boulware became very angry with Dallas police and his family and started plotting an attack. In June of 2015, he apparently got on eBay and he started bidding on a vehicle. The vehicle was described as a zombie apocalypse assault vehicle and a troop transport. The exact verbiage from the post, it also has benches in the back so you can take turns resting during long zombie sieges. The tactical step boards are installed for when you only need swords and axes for drive-by mowdowns. The bumpers are made of reinforced steel tubing, so no dents from smashing zombie heads. It's full armor-plated and has bulletproof windows, just in case you can run over zombie hunting hordes who might try to take this bad boy from you. It was very described.
Did you find a copy of the old eBay advertisement, or was this in the news that they found
I got a copy of the actual eBay post.
Wow. Holy cow.
Yeah, the description added, this full armored zombie busting vehicle features convenient gun ports so no zombie juice touches you during the mass zombie takedown.
I think it was an old Georgia sheriff warrant van, was it not?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right, and it was up armored by Lenco. So
really, I did not know that.
Lenco has pretty good product, and they're the ones that had the armoring around the windows and all the other armor on there.
So they didn't necessarily sell that van model. They probably took a van specifically for them and just armored it for them.
Armored it up.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And it's the armor plating was not around the whole vehicle; it was just around the port windows. Unbeknownst to us, we thought the whole thing was armored up. So it's as the guys are shooting at it, they're like, okay, this is not going through. A lot of the rounds actually did penetrate into the vehicle.
You're jumping ahead, Keith.
Sorry.
No, you're good. So it was a 1995 E-Series 3-door van. It was bought for $8,200 off eBay. From what y'all know, I want to kind of discuss, you just kind of touched on the armor inside. Was there a camera system, too, that we later found out?
Inside the van?
Yes.
I believe there was. I don't know if it was backup camera, but there was some kind of a camera system.
He had like a home security camera set up in there to look out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Jude, can you describe what you know about the window thickness?
Yeah, the window was 13/16 thick on the front windshield, and it had multiple layers, 7 different layers. Now, some of the layers are only 0.25, like a polymer carbonate to go over the window to make it like an
anti-spalling or something.
Anti-spalling, like on the inside. So, but those layers together, that thing cost like $55 a square foot when they made it back in '95. And I'll never forget, after the incident was over, somehow or another, we were down at the auto pound, talked to the homicide detective. He said, "No, we don't need the glass anymore." So somehow it got appropriated, I guess you would say. And we had it at the range, and there was 7 rounds that our patrol guys had shot that would have been in the bottom of a Slurpee cup within about a 4-inch circle right over where he was at. But he might have caught some spalling, but he never took a good round from that. Where I think he got hit was more on the underbelly, on the side, where there was no protection. The protection were around the 3 windows on each side, and the 2 windows on the back, and the front windshield were very well armored up.
Wow.
Jude does not have any actual notes. He's just going completely off his memory on this stuff, and it's going to be like 99.9% accurate. It's remarkable, Jude, that you remember all of these details, and it's not just this incident, but probably your entire life. You could tell us the thickness of the glass of every room you've ever been in. But yes, that's completely free-handed here by Jude.
Yeah, he came empty-handed. And, going back to Chris Webb's episode, he mentioned that we needed to get you on the show, and that was back in 2021. But you were brought up then, and we had to have you for this one.
Yeah, another thing I was going to mention is that the hood of the vehicle was fiberglass, and we didn't know until after the thing almost burned to the ground it was fiberglass. But fortunately, that was where Keith had to use some of his shot plates. It was on that. Not that it would have mattered when you're using a 5.0, but everything else is armored up to the hilt. But there was weaknesses on it, and we just didn't know at the time. It's kind of amazing that all that stuff, and we didn't pick up on it.
Well, I was prepping for this yesterday, and I was over here, and I ran into Sergeant Gordon Fulton, and I didn't know this, but he left that night, and I'm about to just segue right into June 13th, 2015. He left that night, and he actually saw the vehicle driving to the headquarters to the back parking lot. Mm-hmm. He assumed that it was a new vehicle that y'all had, or narcotics, because it had that look. I mean, it looked like one of your older APCs back in the day.
Yep.
Back in the Claggett and Commander day. So approximately 12:30 a.m., this vehicle arrived at DPD headquarters, and it went through the back parking lot, which at the time it wasn't secured.
Correct.
And anybody could just drive right up to the back of the headquarters and park in that lot. And there was just a short distance from the back of the headquarters. And then he placed a duffel bag out in that south parking lot. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Suspect then drove to the front of DPD headquarters and parked, and he went inside. And this is on, at the time, 1400 South Lamar. No one was visible at DPD front desk. He pulled the fire alarm, and then he exited. Is that right, Danny? He then began firing several rounds at the front of the station and the windows and the glass doors. Staff inside called 911 to advise headquarters under attack, and that's what the listener heard during the intro of people inside. It was full of detectives that some of them actually came out and some patrol actually responded out there and took rounds.
Right. His primary response was he was going to set off his IED in the parking lot. And we know from the timeline by the ATF, after they did the post-blast, they were able to capture every time he tried to call on his cell phone. So he tried to set that off. When that didn't happen, then he went to plan B, which is grab his hardware from his weapon systems, and he went to work on headquarters after that.
Do you know how many shots he fired?
I think it was around 168.
Okay. And what type of rifle was he using?
7.62 by 39. And there's a picture of him in, I believe it was Capella's up in Allen.
Mm-hmm.
He's buying 18 boxes of 123 grain soft point by Herter. So it's 360 rounds right there.
Yeah.
The day of.
I saw that on the news story. There's the video of him buying all that ammo. The audio that I pulled was from Dallas News, and they actually had that in there. So he fired at several officers that responded. The radio traffic was hectic. No officers were hit by this gunfire. Do you know if he was hit at all?
I believe when he was talking to negotiators hours later, he admitted to being hit probably 3 times, maybe like the leg, stomach, shoulder, and he caught something along the side of his face. You know, a lot of times when people are shot in the stomach, they're requesting water, and he was requesting water several times during negotiations. So can't tell for sure, but we do believe that underneath the underbelly, and then when he landed in Hutchins, he got out and opened up on the patrol guys that were following him, and there was quite a few holes laying around outside the van before he got back in. So it's very probable that he probably was winged a little bit.
Was he wearing armor? Do you know?
He had armor with him. He had a face mask. He had like ski pants that were armored. He had a gas mask. What else do you have, Keith?
He had for us, it'd be a heavy siege vest, like our entry vests. But I don't know if he was wearing it. All the pictures that I've seen, it was laying on the deck of the van itself.
Okay, so when he exited and he actually went to headquarters, he was, as far as we know, he wasn't wearing actually the heavy vest when he approached.
There's a video of this on YouTube, so the listeners can actually go on and watch it. But you see the van pull up to headquarters in the night. I think some officers, you even see them approach the van with their flashlights. They're trying to check it out, like, what is this? And when they get close, he opens fire on them, and that kicks off the whole thing. So he starts shooting into the front of the headquarters lobby, which blew out all the glass. Officers start responding. There's some officers already at headquarters around the corner in patrol vehicles, and they basically kind of box him in on the street a little bit from a distance. So we had officers...
Ochoa and Morales.
Yeah, so we had officers south on Lamar, and then also some officers come over on Bellevue and start exchanging gunfire with them. And I think they realized that this thing was armored. I don't want to speak for them. No disrespect to any of the officers who were there that night with us, just telling the story as we know it. If we get these facts wrong, I apologize for that. But I will say that those officers did a great job that night in dealing with that threat right there outside of headquarters. Oh, yeah, especially dealing with somebody that they were outgunned from the start, approaching that vehicle that was armored. I have in my notes, Officer Ochoa and Morales, they were in a marked squad car. They were traveling westbound on 900 Bellevue, and they approached, and they had to take cover behind the trunk of the vehicle.
Yes.
Okay. And there, a lot of this, the info we're getting from body cam footage, and also there was some citizens' videos from across the South Side Flats that
captured a big old shootout.
Yeah, they got some pretty good video from the roof line.
Yeah, he drove. He got into his vehicle, and he drove towards their car and actually hit it, and then he turned and he began driving northbound of Lamar, and that's when the chase was on. So when all this started kicking off and it started unfolding from this point, where were y'all at, and how did y'all get notified?
That's the funny part.
So I'll lead off with that. I was in Mark Cuban's front yard, working an off-duty job for him, and I got the 911 call, or not the 911 call, but the call from communications, and it literally sounded like they were under attack at City Hall. They were screaming so much, and so I tried to get as much information as I could, At that point, we had a different system to notify all the SWAT team. It was very convoluted with a bunch of different numbers you had to enter. And with the information I had, you basically have to speak into it, and it sends a recording out to everybody else. And I didn't have any information about where this guy was or really what was going on. So I think I said, everybody in my squad, let's go to headquarters and see what's there. Everybody else, listen to the radio and find the guy. Yeah. And that was really awkward because typically we have all the information that we ever want as far as what's a safe route, how many people do we need, what equipment are we looking for, all that stuff goes into that message. But that one was kind of a, hey, listen to the radio. Here
grab your gear and let's go. Yeah, it was a little chaotic, to say the least. I was actually at my house. I'd done something during the day, and I turned my phone on to vibrate, and I'd forgotten about it. Well, at my house, there's really only one spot that it gets a decent cell signal, so that's where my phone was sitting, on the charger. Well, again, unbeknownst to me, I went to bed and left my phone on vibrate. Well, we were on call, so I'm like, okay, great. So I woke up to the sound of my phone basically vibrating off the windowsill and hitting the floor from all the text messages and call-outs that were coming through. Kind of a light sleeper, so when I woke up, I'm like, oh, crap. I think it was my phone. So I go running in there, and I think I missed somewhere around 100 text messages from my guys that initially started with Chris Nilsson, who was out of town. He's listening to all this, and he's letting us know that headquarters is under attack even before Sarge put out the call-out. So that started our text thread. And this is shortly after I got rid of my flip phone and went to a real phone, so I'm still learning how to use that thing at the time. And I looked through this, and I'm like, my first words out of my mouth were, oh, shit, I missed it. I don't think I ever got dressed that fast and ran out of my house. I think I scared the hell out of my wife. In fact, I know I did. Trucking out and jumped in the car, and I did things in that Tahoe you should never do in a vehicle.
Hey, you made it there.
Yes, I did.
I was working an extra job on Straight Lane, and I was about 15 minutes from the house, and I got a call from GH, Garrett Hellinger. Now, Garrett is usually as cool as a fan blade, one of those type of guys, and he's screaming, get everything we got in the armory and get downtown. I'm like, what the hell? So I switched over to the radio, and I flipped back around on 30 and headed back into downtown. And I went to the arms room and loaded up whatever I thought we would need at the time.
What was that? What did you think we might need, or what did we have available that you were going to load up, or you did load up?
Well, I want to make sure we had weapon systems that we would have needed.
Zoo gun?
Zoo gun was definitely in the back of my thigh. That's a touchy subject, but but I will say I made a big mistake, because when I got down into the back in the armory, we had some specialty munitions, and I was from here to Keith. All I had to do was reach and grab them, and I didn't. I was thinking armor piercing, but we had some stuff that would have been perfect for this, and I made a big mistake not grabbing them. It came into play later on in the operation, but everything worked out because we had a little time delay, and we were able to cover up from my initial big mistake there.
Now, Daniel, do you remember anything about an armored car?
Yeah, so I had actually had a long week in court, the entire week. I was in court with a case with one of my last defendants from an investigation I had when I was undercover with narcotics on the cartel. So that Friday was the final day. Jury came back with a verdict of guilty. That night, I'm kind of celebrating with Brandon Berry, just hanging loose, having some drinks. And all of a sudden, we start getting text messages from Ryan Scott saying, headquarters under attack by an armored vehicle. And then it was all capital letters. It was Argid for SWAT, Argid for SWAT. It was craziness. And I actually text back, are you drunk? And then the call out came, and phones and drinks went flying everywhere, and we rushed out of there. I had to drop Brandon off to get his Tahoe, and then I raced back to my house and grabbed my Tahoe and jumped in it. So we're listening to the radio, and by then we're hearing the van had been in that shooting at headquarters, and now it was taking off. It had made it to the freeway, and it's heading south out of Dallas. So at that point, we're just jumping in on the freeway to get behind this thing and chase it down.
Was armored, is that like the equivalent of fragile for fragile?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. That would fit.
So he's going south. He's heading towards Wilmer, and Wilmer Hutchins is for the listener that they don't know Texas. It's about 30 minutes south or less.
Yeah,
it's a small little city, and you are trying to catch up to this. So Jude, you talked about being in the equipment room, and we've touched on it before about that role, and I remember Matt Smith was actually upset that he didn't get to use a zoo gun in this incident,
Mm-hmm.
and you actually showed up on time with all the equipment. So your role, can you describe to the listener what your role was at that point?
Yeah, at that time, we were in there was about a half a dozen of us that were in the equipment room, and our equipment had increased 20-fold from when I first came over in 87. In 87 we had wheel guns and shotguns. Now we got 5 APCs. These young cats come over, and the first thing they do is they get a new vest, automatic weapon, all this. Back then, there was 5 MP5s for 64 guys. Nobody had their individual. It's just the proliferation of equipment has just exploded in the SWAT world. Computers, hydraulics. It's just amazing from where we started out. So you need a lot of guys down there that can distribute it, know what they're doing with it. There's a lot of maintenance behind the scenes. Always has to go on. And just like the guy that runs the fleet, Joe Guzman, he's responsible for 80 vehicles. And that's a full-time job, just parlaying between them and the people over at the shop, and just to make sure we get all our vehicles up and running all the time. So that's just one fraction of it. And then you look at all the different weapon systems and all our accessory equipment. It can be overwhelming trying to keep up with it. Now, Keith has been exposed to it probably more. I've been gone for a few years now, but he can tell you a lot better what's going on now than I can.
Well, so Jude, you say you started SWAT in 87.
That's correct.
Okay. And when did you retire?
In 2020.
Oh, so it's very recent.
Yes.
Well, thank you for your service, and especially that being that in SWAT that long, because you saw several decades of
Right.
change, and with all these different weapon systems that you were coming across, and you had to be basically had a hand in being in charge of in that room and getting them to the operators. Did you have to study the weapons and know them yourself and just know their function?
Naturally, somebody's got to be. Where does the buck stop? Somebody's got to be in
You're
charge.
the gatekeeper of the
right.
Yeah.
You have to have the wherewithal to know what you're dealing with, and and help these guys out sometimes. And so, what's kind of amazing with the 50s is they're not owned by the city of Dallas. The Dallas Arms collectors donated them to us. So you think that sounds kind of weird, but anytime you're talking about large weapon systems, explosives, it's very hard to get any traction or get anything through the chain, as I would say. Because if a commander comes over, he doesn't want the nothing to shake loose. He wants the same wind blowing on the tree as yesterday. He don't want to be caught up in any one of these big hot deals. And if you mention 50 cal explosives, oh my God, you take a 50 cal, you're going to go through it's going to ricochet, go through a school bus, and then it's going to go downtown and hit the cathedral.
Yeah.
That's their mindset, Explosives.
It's artillery rounds.
Yeah. It took us 15, almost 20 years to get explosives in the fleet before we can get them up, let's say, legally operating with all the rules, regulations, and stuff like that. And it took, it hadn't been for Dave Carpenter and Eddie Fuller, we still wouldn't have had it. Those guys Dave took the lead and ran with it. And then when Dave left, Eddie finished it up. And they were the ones that were able to do it through the legal way, through the city attorney, and it just took forever.
Well, Claggett and Commander talked about even the optics of even being called SWAT back then, and y'all went with tactical right for years, and then finally you changed the name from you just start going by SWAT, and even having machine guns back then was select fire is what that's what they had to be called because it didn't sound as aggressive.
Ominous.
People hear machine guns, they think of mafia Tommy guns, and
And the only time we really had progress is we'd had to have a tragedy. For example, when we finally got through with the energetics is when Jeremy got shot up in the hotel off of Channel 5 when he got hit in the leg, got hit in the femur.
Yep.
At that time, that kind of gave us more impotence, a little more momentum for the breaching side of it, because at the time we had to call one of the bomb techs. The guy may live in Fort Worth. By the time he gets to the range, picks up what he needs, and gets to the scene, that could be a couple hours later. We need something on stand, ready to go, without all this big delay. And that's what took forever. Is how do we get this where it's ergonomic but safe at the same time?
So most of us in the room know this, Joe, but you probably don't know. But Jude is looked at as the godfather of SWAT. If you haven't kind of sensed this already, like you would go to training in other parts of the country and the guys would be like, oh yeah, that Dallas SWAT guy who's like the godfather. He's like, what's his name, Judd or something? Or like Jude Braun. Yeah, that's the guy. That guy knows about everything. So Jude, it rests on his shoulders that really the sniper program and the cadre in Dallas SWAT really is because Jude spearheaded this effort for years. This isn't something that happens in a week or a month or a year even. For years, and made that sniper program what it is. And then later focused the attention to the explosive breaching program. And I think it's just something poignant to point out that on June 13th, 2015, it's the sniper program that comes into play. And then a year later on 7/7/2016, it's the explosive breaching program that comes into play.
Yeah, let's get into that. I was going to get into the sniper program significance and also the battle that you had. It's going to be a side story to this main story, but I think it's like Danny just pointed out. It's pertinent to the overall picture of SWAT's response, and then also what you actually had available to battle this guy.
Yeah, but it's always been, you're on what the troops want may not necessarily be what the administration wants. But got to give kudos to Tony Black. He got a hold of Brown. He took him out the range. I don't know if Chief Brown was a 1-star, 2-star at the time. I think he was at Northeast. I can't remember back exactly. And he let him shoot the 50. This is probably 2003. Chief Brown shot a couple times. He said, that's it? Okay, no problem, And eventually it got approved all the way up. Not owned by the city, still Dallas Arms Collectors. And we had to sign like a lease, they still have proprietary rights, but they did a fantastic job. They had the foresight and the understanding to say, hey, something could happen someday. You may need something like this. And plus they bought 1,000 rounds of ammo for each one. So with all this, we had to do a tremendous amount of testing. How do you stop all this energy, kinetic energy, as it's traveling through the air in an urban environment? You just can't let this thing go. It can go 7,000 meters or 7,000 yards. Look on any old YouTube video in Afghanistan, Iraq, and you see a Mod Deuce firing at night, and every fifth round is a tracer. You see your tracer skipping all around the ground. So this is, okay, how can we get this into a usable piece of equipment? So one of the things was specialty rounds, and there was a company called EBR, Energy Ballistic Research, and they had compressed copper rounds. So compressed copper gives us a tremendous advantage because it was used by the hit-run Coast Guard squads when they were firing at boat runners coming out of Cuba or whatever down in Miami area, and the rounds don't ricochet. They hit the water and they break apart. So somebody called us up one day, I don't know who the guy is today, said, hey, you guys might want to look at this. Okay, so I think I set Webb down to, they originally were down in Bastrop, and he had a little property down there, and, he talked to him and stuff, and we got some, and so we started, working with them. But the muzzle velocity on a 50 is 15,000 foot-pounds. What's it on a 308, Keith? Big question here.
2,600.
Probably about 3,400. So you say, well, what is 15,000 foot-pounds? If you had 15,000 pounds and you had the rifle vertical and it went off, it would move. It'd have enough energy to move at 15,000 pounds 1 foot. So that's where they come up with foot-pound. 338, it may be around 5,000. And these numbers aren't exact, but 308, we're looking at a little over 3,000. So what does the 50 give you? It gives you an option for anti-vehicle. That's what our philosophy was. We're going to use these if we have to take out a vehicle. We had a couple semi-chases that didn't turn out the way we would want it to. And that was part of the reasoning for the 50 was semi-chases. Aerial platform came about out of this. And there's a lot of other stuff that dovetailed into it as well.
An anti-material weapon.
Yes, exactly.
Platform to disable.
Yeah, you mentioned the semi. Is that was one of them you're talking about? Is when that guy took the female driver hostage, and he went on a big wild chase out west?
Yes.
Yeah, all the way out to somewhere out in Parker County.
Yeah, yeah.
I didn't know a semi could run on 18 rims for about 100 miles.
Just kept going and going.
Yeah, and actually at the time I was up in the chopper. It was kind of funny, but I was sitting on the couch on a Sunday. I get a call. I got down to the station. Keith was already there. He had the 50 already set up. He ran me down there to I-20. Chopper land, picked me up. And we had just beginning working with the helicopter unit on aerial platform. And we were still kind of in our infancy at the time. And the sergeant he's a real funny guy. He kept calling me 5-0. He goes, okay, 5-0, you ready? I said, yes, sir. So he just pulls up. We're right along the semi. He's going 22 mile an hour. But we don't get the authority from downtown. So I'm sitting there watching this guy. We stop and we go over to fuel in Fort Worth twice. And there's an ambush point set up between Fort Worth and Arlington. And we got to go get fuel. I tell the pilot, I say, hey, buddy, I got to see this. Can we at least wait till after the ambush? He goes, no, man, we're running a quart, we're splashing and going, just because of the weight, having me in the back, was a little bit, little more than normal what they're used to. So I come back, I'm expecting, and I look and I could see miles away the chase is still going on. I can't believe it, So we go down and finally, the DPS jumped in and got off their couches and decided they were going to end the chase, and it ended. And kind of there was a lot of things that could have been done better on our part. So that was, I think it was one of the maddest times I've ever been, because if you're going at the same speed the vehicle's going, you don't have to worry about a lead or lag. It's just point aim, point impact, and it had been over in 2-3 seconds. We naturally had to wait till our enter team was in position because he was holding a hostage. But they also had provisions for him, and then the enter team to get up there as quick as possible. They were following behind an APC. So this was just like another level of frustration that we had to go through for a long time.
And that lady basically saved herself, really.
Right.
She took the gun from the suspect, and you ought to know at the time, but she jumped out of the semi and threw the gun. There's a video of her actually doing that too. If y'all want to, listeners want to look that up. Yeah, you just see the gun kind of fly off to the side, and he stays in.
Yeah. Yep.
Y'all peppered him with gas afterwards, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, her DPS just jumped in and plain clothes and took some shots, and then at the end they just took off.
Yep. Thanks for letting us play. See
ya.
I had a bird's eye view. They pulled up in the Crown Vic. The guy put 30 rounds on one side, and they actually took out the radiator from the. Normally we would take it from the front, but they took it from the back. They rolled over on the other side, reloaded, and got another 30. And then the Sarge got off about probably 10 rounds with his 45. So you're looking at about 70 rounds that was shot into the vehicle, and it stopped.
Yeah, they got it done.
I think we could have done it with 1 or 2, but kudos to them. For they took care of command, and we still had some of our people, and we got a lot of grief from this whenever we saw our friends from the DPS. One of our commanders at the time wanted to call DPS SWAT out of Austin to come up and finish the operation. Because we were in Parker County, we weren't in Dallas County. Maybe a little bit worried about the liability or whatever it was. Not my call. But afterwards, it was brutal, I'll tell you. Every time they saw us, they let us know about it.
So back to the chase down to Wilmer. You're getting all this equipment. I want to. Can you just describe the 50 cal platform to the listener? The model. It just that what Dallas has. I know it's not ours, but we have it on loan.
Right. It's just your basic Barrett 82A1. These are 29-inch barrels. Originally, we had the 20-inch barrels that came on them, and then we had a little problem with we were shooting out of the ship one day, and we cracked some glass at about $12,000. Damage to the helicopter, so we decided to go with the 29-inch barrel. So, that's basically your, not the 107s, which came along later with improvements. These are 82 A1s when Barrett came out in 82 with the Barrett. So,
where were you driving down there to cart all this equipment?
I had one of the older APCs.
Yeah, I saw the pictures of that. It looked pretty. What roughly what year that APC was from?
I would guess it's probably about
98 or the 2004?
2004, 2005 genre, I believe. Mm-hmm.
Wasn't that the weirdest drive down there?
Yeah.
Because all the officers and the Dallas Sheriff have blocked off all the entrance ramps and everything else, and it was like the Autobahn in the dark.
Yeah.
You were just driving down and
well,
going,
20 wasn't like that. 45 was.
45 was. And it was like, when am I going to catch up to this? And you just all of a sudden pass an officer with their lights on just sitting on an entrance ramp, and then you go further down and there'd be more lights and sirens, and they're just sitting.
I-20 was a parking lot for me. So.
Yeah. Well, during the chase down Hutchins, a DSO sheriff, she basically did use a stick on spikes on the
stop sticks.
Van,
yes.
stop sticks on the van, right?
Correct.
And there's actually video of her doing that as well.
Mm-hmm.
And after that happened, how much further did he go after his blew the tires?
Like a half mile, quarter mile, right?
No,
I think it was pretty
wasn't
much
very long. It was over pretty fast.
So he exits off the freeway, goes down into kind of a major intersection where they had like a Jack in the Box and a bank and a couple other businesses, and rolls into that Jack in the Box parking lot with patrol hot on him.
Right.
And they, I guess, would attempt to do a felony traffic stop essentially on him. And I think he actually exits the driver's side of the van, right?
Yes.
And starts returning fire on them.
They got into another gunfight
and
there.
They get into another gunfight there, and then the officers end up kind of becoming pinned down behind their patrol cars while trying to hold this guy down in the parking lot as well.
After he left that parking lot, I don't know if he didn't see the bar ditch in front of him, or if he tried turning because his front wheels were flat. So if he tried to turn, it may have pushed him forward, and that's when he wound up actually getting stuck in that ditch. Okay.
Yeah, it came to rest at the 100 block of South Austin in Hutchins, Texas.
Yes.
And the responding officers that actually got in that tried that felony stop were officers Vanderslice, Nowicki, Brower, Crow, Wascom, and Harris. I'm not sure. I don't think that all of them are still in the department. I think some of them had already retired since 2015. But nobody got hurt. No officers were hurt from that gunfight. So 100 South Hutchins, it's Jack in the Box between Palestine and Harris Street. Sits on the west side of southbound service road. Restaurant faces east. Van was parked in Jack in the Box parking lot on the west driveway. Vehicle stood facing west, the trunk east.
Correct.
So when y'all responded, it had been disabled at that point, and it was basically like it was BP.
Well, yeah. So disabled in that the tires have been flattened.
Right. He wasn't driving any further with. Okay. All right. So at this point, y'all start showing up. Can y'all talk about your setup?
All right. The initial setup for the guys, again, I was really, really late getting there. The initial setup, the guys had set up a pretty tight perimeter, as close as they could feel comfortable, knowing that this guy was already been shooting with the officers several occasions. They didn't want to push too close to him, so they set the APCs up off the driver's side. There was another one off the back doors, back by the other trucks.
We had two, one on the rear right and then one almost directly behind it on the rear that was going to push up and basically evac those patrol officers out of there.
Right. So the patrol officers were scattered wherever they could find cover. Once the SWAT guys started showing up, the guys were setting up containment positions where they could keep an eye on the vehicle but stay out of the line of fire. Like I says, I was literally the last SWAT guy to show up. I was almost 40 minutes behind everybody due to my debacle with my phone. Once I finally got there, I parked on the service road behind all the other squad cars and everything else. I was on the phone with my sergeant as I was making my approach, and I told him, I says, I'm late. I'll deal with it later. What and where do you need me? He says, we've got enough sniper teams already. I need you on the assault team. So grab your gear and you join us. It turns out it would have been the APC over on closer to the driver's side. I'm like, roger that. No, I'll get geared up and I'll meet you there as soon as I can. So I grabbed my assault gear, which was at the time was just basically a plate carrier, my helmet, gas mask, and my rifle. And then I started hauling ass down the service road. Coming up to the command post, I kind of blew past them at sprinting speed, let them know I'm here, and I'm joining my guys over on the side. As I approached the intersection just south of the command post on the service road, I see Clubber, Mark Lang, coming northbound with the 50 on one shoulder, his sniper rifle in his other hand, and he's doing his best to run, but he's clearly running out of gas. He's been running for a while. I see him running at me. I'm like, oh, shit. I got to help him first. So I run up to him and says, Clubber, what do you need? He says, help me with a 50. I'm resetting up on the nose of the truck. Roger that. So I grab the 50 off his shoulder, give him a break, reverse course, and we start trucking to the west. We're going to go around to the front nose of the truck. As I'm heading to the west, I'm passing little pockets of SWAT guys kind of behind vehicles and behind buildings and other locations. And I let them know. I says, I'm going to go help Clubber set up, and then I'll be back later. Turns out I never rejoined anybody else. I stayed with Clubber the whole time.
Okay. What kind of information that y'all received at that point about anything that was going on at headquarters with duffel bags that were laid out and all of that? Did y'all hear any of that chatter already at this point?
No, at the initial setup, I didn't hear any of that intel. That came later on after we'd already set up. Like I says, I joined Mark just off the nose. Turned out we were about 70-something yards out, but we had a pretty good eyes into the windshield of the vehicle.
Okay. And Webb was stationed where?
He was on the bank, on the passenger side, as a sniper.
Passenger side, if you call the nose of the truck 12 o'clock, they were probably 4 o'clock position, maybe 5 o'clock, but they were elevated on the bank roof. So I gave him a pretty good eyes in to the passenger side windows, but being dark, there's not a whole lot of visibility into the truck yet.
So just to paint the picture for the listener again, so this van is pulled into the Jack in Box parking lot. The rear end is facing the freeway.
Correct.
The nose or the front is actually facing a field.
Correct. Which,
going further through that field, now you start getting into a residential area. So there's homes and everything else back there. There's some homesteads and some larger pieces of property.
There were actually houses directly off to his passenger side, about the 1 o'clock position. Those houses, one house, a garage, another little outbuilding, and another one that looked like it was pretty much falling down. Mm-hmm. That's the building that Mark and I actually got behind on the ground level.
Yeah.
Just outside that field.
And then on the passenger side was the bank, and we had a sniper team there.
Correct.
On the driver's side, we had one of our APCs with some guys.
Correct.
On the rear, we had an APC with some of our guys, and then also on the rear passenger quarter panel, there was a third APC. That also had some guys.
Correct. There were along that backside of the van as well. I don't know how many squad cars were back over there, but those were the initial responding officers that showed up. So,
Danny, where were you located?
I initially was at that rear passenger quarter panel. I'd met up with Jerry Wante and some of the other 30s, and then eventually we ended up moving around to the rear, and I actually ended up being with Jude towards the end of the evening. But this was kind of the initial formation. Once we got the patrol officers out, we just made sure that this was contained for the most part, and then we're starting to work on everything from there. Command post is trying to get us information on who is this guy, what's the deal with the shooting at headquarters, what kind of van is this that this guy's in? What do we think he might be armed with? And just kind of playing the waiting game at this point.
Okay, at this time, were y'all aware of any kind of explosives anywhere?
At that point, no. I wasn't aware of anything. If they'd said it on the radio, I didn't hear it. Like I says, I basically grabbed my stuff and I was hauling ass. Once I got established and got into that initial hide site with Mark, that's when I really started focusing on the radio and listening whatever intel was happening to come out. But at that point, no, I hadn't heard anything about any explosives.
Yeah, I think the first real information we got is when he decided to call 911. And then he asked to be patched in, or they offered to patch him into someone at the command post, and that's when he said he was injured and needed help. And that was really the first piece of information we had about who we were dealing with.
Okay, yeah. The reason I'm asking this is because it's going to become very relevant later, as far as where y'all were positioned and what y'all were thinking as far as blast radius.
Yes.
At that point. And the pucker factor, I imagine, went up immensely once you started hearing about, you thinking Oklahoma City bombing, and then, okay, we're going to get into that. So he called 911 and said some things that were alarming. So I'm going to play a little bit of that.
Hello?
Hi, yes, sir. This is the Dallas Police Department. Did you call regarding a call at Jack in the Box?
Yeah, and by the way, I want everything I own to go to my son. Okay?
You want what?
Everything I own to go to my son.
Who is this?
If you come near this van, I'll blow the fuck out.
Hold on a second, sir.
Yes, sir.
You took everything from me. I had never even planned on fucking killing y'all. I tried to say y'all fucking lies. I told you where Bin Laden was and every fucking thing else. You sit there and you fucking attacked me. You sit there and you took every goddamn thing I fucking loved. You took everything from me when you took my son away from me. You took everything I worked for, everything I fucking loved, every goddamn thing. I had never planned on killing anybody. You took every goddamn thing from me. If you come near this van, I'll blow the fuck out of it. Do you understand me now?
You're going to do what again? I'm sorry?
I'm going to blow the fuck out of this goddamn van.
Okay.
Do not come near this van.
Okay. Listen, I'm going to get your number to somebody else that's out there at the scene and let them talk to you, okay?
You took every goddamn thing I loved. Everything.
Well, before we do all that, just give us a little sit and let's talk about this thing. There's no reason to do anything rash.
I don't want to talk to you. If you come near this van, I'll blow the shit out of it. I just want everything that I own to fucking go to my son.
Okay. Well, how are you planning on blowing your van up?
I have about fucking 20 pounds of fucking C4 in this motherfucker, dude.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, before you do all that, let's get somebody to talk to you.
You try to open the van, it blows up.
How is it going to do that? With the C4 you said?
Uh-huh.
How many more people are in there with you?
I'm not going to give you that information.
Okay. And what color is the van that you're in?
Blue.
Okay. All right, where are you at right now?
I'm at Jack in the Box.
Okay. All right. Okay. What's your name?
You don't need to know that neither, man.
Is it your van?
No. Hey, man, I'm already fucking dying, dude. Let me fucking die.
There's no reason for that. You don't have to do that.
Hey. I'm not going to prison, motherfucker.
Say that again.
You understand that shit?
No, what'd you say? You said you're not going to what?
I'm not going to prison.
Okay, so that doesn't leave us a whole lot of options here.
Well, you know what, man?
What's that?
If you come near this van, I'll blow the fuck out of it. You understand that now?
I understand it. Is that your van?
Yeah, it's my van.
Okay. All right. And you said we took your son from you?
You took my son from me. You took everything I fucking loved, man.
How did we take your son from you?
I was the best fucking father ever.
I'm sorry?
I did every goddamn thing for my son.
How did we take your son from you?
You took every fucking thing from me.
But how did we take your son from you?
You took my son from me because you accused me of being a terrorist. Therefore, I fucking acted out exactly what you accused me of being. You accused me of it. You punished me for it. I didn't have a goddamn thing. All I had was some guns. I didn't even have any fucking guns on me when you pulled me over and shit that first fucking time. I didn't have shit on me. I never planned on fucking killing anybody. You took every goddamn thing I had from me. You took every fucking thing from me. Everything. I'm already fucking dying, man. Let me fucking die.
No, you're not dying yet. You don't have to do all that just yet. Listen.
Oh, I am dying, and I plan on dying. And I plan on dying inside this van. And if you come near this fucking van, I'll blow the fucker up. You understand that now?
I understand. That's completely. I understand that. We're not. Listen, we're not in a hurry to get out there and make that happen.
Well, you better fucking just leave me the fuck alone, man.
Well,
okay?
I don't know if that's going to be able to happen either. I mean, this thing is. Yeah, we're not going to be able to go anywhere. So.
I just want to lay here and die, man.
Are you shot?
Dude, you don't need to know if I'm shot or not.
Okay.
Let me lay here and die.
Say that again?
If you come near this van, I will blow it up. If you come anywhere near this van, I will blow it up.
Okay. I understand what you're saying there, but you're saying you're wanting to lay there and die. How is it that that's going to happen?
I'll fucking die inside this van, man. Don't worry about it.
I'm sorry. Say that again. Somebody else was just talking to me. What's up, bud?
Not come near this van.
No, I've heard you say that, and there's nobody coming near it right now, are there?
Okay, now armed with that new info, how did that change your game plan and also y'all's response, and what was the chatter like amongst the command post?
Well, at that time, I think we all realized that we were probably a little bit too close. So we need to button up and back up as much as we could, but we're limited because we got, the bank behind us and some other obstacles there. But we did expand the perimeter. I think some of the teams that were out there also kind of got back a little bit more. I think from the beginning, once we got there, we realized this was going to be an open air option. It was the only way not the only way, but unless you gave up. But it was probably going to be our best opportunity on this operation was going to be through there, because now we're talking a whole different element when he's claimed that he has this amount of energetics in the van. If you come up, I'm going to, set it up and try and take you out. So is he a VBID, like it was mentioned by Slacker? Or is he going to become a PBID, person born? Is he going to put some devices on him and just charge somebody? Or is he going to take his vehicle and try and clip somebody over like Bastille Day in France and kill 60-some people? Even though he's on rims, I'm not saying he can't get up and get moving. So, this now we're seeing like, hey, this is a lot more than we originally bargained for. This thing has really escalated and ratcheted up quite a bit.
And that was my concern. It was that he had come to a stop, and he was on rims, but that didn't stop him earlier from driving. And I kept saying, like, what if he decides to put it in gear and punch it and just go straight through this field to get away? And now if he really has these explosives in the van, we got a vehicle-borne IED running around.
Right.
How far was the Jack in the Box from where his resting place? It was pretty close, right?
Yeah, 50 yards.
50 yards max.
Did everybody get evacuated out of there pretty quickly?
Yeah, by the time I got there, like I said, it was getting late. By the time I got there, they had all those surrounding buildings evacuated. It was late enough at night anyway that I think the only people in the Jack in the Box were probably employees cleaning up.
Yeah.
At that point, it was 1 o'clock in the morning,
1 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah. So, they'd had everything. Really, the only folks that were around him were cops at that point. But even us, the guys were close. And if this turned out to be a true VBID, that's, we were well within the blast radius.
Yeah, so can you describe that a little? You have background, obviously, out and Webb has talked about your knowledge of explosives. Can you kind of go into that?
Sure.
Your background on that?
I had a standoff card in the APC. All the APCs did for, different type of, whether it be a backpack all the way up to a semi-bomb. So
you mean you had a card that explained the standoff you need to have for different amounts of explosives?
Exactly. Right. So, but at the same time, you're looking at, okay, if he's in armor, how much energy is going to be absorbed by his armor, and we're in armor. So it's a little bit different than just open air, because we do have some protection. And he has his vehicle that's going to absorb a lot of the energy as well. So I sat there and I'm looking in my head trying to clean it up, and I'm like, I think we're going to be good. But if it's C4, we could have a big problem, just because the dynamics of the components in it, and it's going to get up the pressures a lot quicker, a lot faster, and we could probably catch some frag from something like that.
If it's thinking like Oklahoma City bombing.
Yeah, that was ANFO. Still tremendously amount of energy. He had, like 700, 800 pounds. Not that it wasn't out of the realm of possibility, but we really didn't know. Honestly, there was no way to know. If it was ANFO, we were all in the radius, but at the same time, we did have some protection. We were shielded. I would say shielded in place, but we were shielded. The guys like Keith, those guys, not so much.
We're screwed.
Yeah,
just out in the open.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
So you had that drama unfolding there with this new information, but there was a second story going on at the same time that back at DPD headquarters, and Sergeant Wolverton here, he was there trying to clean up that mess.
As we found is typical when you have an incident like this, there's usually the report that you have more than one person involved. Happens to be incorrect in most of our cases. However, there was information that there was a shooter at headquarters. So, as I alluded to earlier, I asked my squad to respond to headquarters and told everybody else to go chase the car. And as is typical when you're the new sergeant over in SWAT, nobody really listens to you. So 3 of my guys showed up at headquarters, and the other 6 decided to go chase the car. So that was 3 guys that I had to clear headquarters with. Now, fortunately, the Metro squad was already at headquarters. They had responded and started clearing floors, and I think they got either the first and second or just the first. So I had Todd Stratman, Kelly White, and Ryan Scott with me, which Ryan Scott was newer than I was, but way more skilled already. So they went and started clearing the 3rd floor, 4th floor. We had a K-9 show up finally and helped us out with the 5th floor. But during that whole deal, the fire alarm was still going off, which compromised all of our communications back and forth. So we were trying to tell the lieutenant holding the scene at headquarters to let them know out at the van what was going on, and trying to get information back from the van to tell us what was going on. And it just wasn't working. I had an old headset that didn't communicate very well. So anytime I actually wanted to speak to somebody, I had to walk out of headquarters, go all the way back out through the parking lot, which was right where the device was nicely packaged up next to some cars. I must have walked by that thing 3 or 4 times, and every time I did, the EOD guys were just having an absolute fit.
Yeah.
There were a lot of pleasantries exchanged back and forth between me and them, and I'd like to apologize formally and thank them for trying to save me, but I was going to be a victim of my own stubbornness there. So yeah, everything was kind of up in the air as far as what's going on out there, what's really going on here. I've got 3 guys. There's more stairwells than we could possibly handle. We had the Metro guys holding the stairwells as best they could. Elevators, everything was just a little bit overwhelming, especially for someone with my tenure and experience. I was just trying to do the best I could to hold that part together.
Searching for a shooter or another attacker. Possibly.
Yeah, trying to find somebody else who might be wanting to harm people inside of headquarters.
Somehow gotten inside headquarters. Do we get any information that there was someone else in headquarters?
So when he went in and they had him on video, they didn't ever tell us that he exited, and they didn't know how many people were actually involved. So we had the ghost man. Nobody knew who he was or what he was doing. Headquarters is full of cubicles and offices and
locked doors.
A lot of locked doors. That could have got really expensive really fast if we started breaching all the doors. We decided to bypass locked doors, which didn't make a whole lot of sense in retrospect, but we did a lot of things that did make a whole lot of sense in the middle of trying to figure out what was going on with everything there. So having 2 different crime scenes basically and 2 different teams working them, I don't know that the communication between those 2 was going as well as we wanted it to, but we did have a live explosive device at headquarters. EOD was working that. We had a miniature SWAT team working inside of headquarters, trying to coordinate everything was with that, and thank God for Todd Stratman and Kelly White, because those two basically carried the load that entire day for everybody at headquarters as far as coordination and telling me what needed to be done. I'm eternally grateful for those two guys just in general, but in that situation for sure, they definitely saved the day for us.
I'd like to formally apologize to you for not showing up at headquarters, but you never called me either, so you never said come to headquarters, so I was listening to the radio.
It's not accepted.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to describe that parking lot. So there was a duffel bag that Kent kept walking by, correct? So in that south parking lot, there's 29 personal and city vehicles. The bag and bomb located in the north middle parking lot, approximately in the third space, according to the PES report. And Kent, so when bomb squad, they were there working at what point they had this going on, this BP going on down in Hutchins, and while you were there, what were they doing at that point? They try to move the bag, or what were they doing?
I'm not real certain. I think they had come up with their own plan. Again, the communication was very limited between the fire alarm going off and my headset just not working. I didn't get a whole lot of back and forth from them. But my understanding is the device itself was attempted to be triggered a couple times, and it didn't actually go off until we tried to move it. So once they picked it up and moved it, that's when the device went off, and we were still inside of headquarters. I don't remember any sort of notification as far as, hey, it might be loud here in a second. You might want to get to the other side of the building. None of that is memorable right now. You might have to talk to some of the guys who actually had their wits about them at that point.
You heard it though.
Oh yeah, no, heard it, felt it. It was.
What side of headquarters were you on?
I think we were right about in the middle, probably 3 or 4 floors up at that point. But the device was on the south side.
Yeah, and that visitor parking area.
I have it on pretty good authority that the car that it was right in front of, there's no assigned spots there, but somebody typically parked there, and that day somebody beat them to the office and actually took their parking spot. And I don't know if that's karma or irony or what the deal is there, but it mangled up the front end of that car pretty well.
Yep.
Time-wise, when that bomb went off, y'all were still at that point on the BP.
Yes.
Correct? Okay.
Correct.
And Jude, you were talking about, so do y'all have any idea of why he was trying to remote in and activate that bomb? Do y'all know why? What was causing it to malfunction?
Yes, I'd rather not say.
Okay.
But I will tell you that he was also trying to set it off when the BP was going off down in Hutchins, and we know this because of the work that the ATF guys did when they went back and they re-engineered everything out in California.
Okay.
So he was trying to do it the whole time. The guy had potential. He was like a shade tree mechanic. He just made one little small mistake. And if he had done that, we're talking about the first time someone used a cellular device in the United States to set off a bomb. So we were extremely, extremely lucky. Nobody got hit, hurt, injured on this operation. I can never figure it out. I'm just amazed by it the whole time when I think about it. But at that time, I got on my little flip phone, and I called Marine One, and I said, hey, we got to take this vehicle out. It's running. We know he's got a capability. We cannot like Danny said, we cannot let him get out in the community. Even if he goes up and torches it off where these poor people are living in these shacks up here along the railroad tracks, we're liable for that. We can't let that happen. So I said, we got to take out the vehicle. And he said, hold on. He calls me back. He goes, hey, the chief's in a press conference right now. We're going to talk to him. And, we'll get authorization. I think about that time the code, I don't know what time the code, so we already had the code, but we got to disable this vehicle, and that was kind of like utmost on my mind at that time is it's got to go out.
So about what time do you think was this call you made to Mark Vernon or Marine One? in like 1:30 or 2 maybe.
Probably somewhere along that timeline. We'd been there probably about an hour and 15, 20 minutes, I think.
Yeah, so he had called 911 pretty early on, like almost right away.
Yes.
And they had somehow connected him to our command post. And so Mark Vernon, our SWAT commander at the time, and some of the negotiators were there, specifically Larry Gordon. And he got patched into Larry Gordon, so Larry starts having a conversation with him pretty quick. And I think there's a lot of back and forth where suspect's not wanting to give up too much information about himself, but he is telling us he has explosives. He is saying he's injured. And I think he was kind of probing at Larry like, hey, I need water. Hey, I need medical attention. You need to provide this to me. And I think Larry had said that he had told him like, oh, no, we're not going to come any closer to you. You need to come out and give yourself up. And then they'd be playing games with hanging up the phone on each other and calling back and arguing. So this has been going on for a while. And I will never forget when Mark Vernon came on the radio and told us a device went off at headquarters, because that we knew everything just flipped and changed right then. Like, we're now in a different game. And I'm sure at the command post with the negotiators and the command staff, that game changed for them there too.
Mm-hmm. And Jude, that's whenever Chief Brown, he was in a press conference, and then at I have here in my notes at 1:45, the green light was given.
Sounds about right. When I was talking to Marine One, I was like, hey, I really think I made a mistake on those EBR rounds. I said, is there any chance we can get anybody back to station and get them? And he's like, what kind of nut are you,
Yeah.
And I'm like, he goes, why? And I said, well, they're specially around. And I had looked over back in I-45, and I saw a couple state troopers. Right, I knew where Keith was. The line of fire, probability, small bullet, big sky, however you want to say it, was pretty small. But I knew we had these, and we had a respiratory pause, and Marine One got Master P, Mark Paggy, to go back. Mark was in the equipment room with us, and he went back and got him, and then I felt like, man, Atlas, the weight of the world was off my shoulders, because I knew.
It's not on you now.
No, it's not on me. I knew that everything was going to go pretty much more on script and we cut down on a lot of liability at the time, in my opinion. So I knew this was going to be a pretty big incident when it was over, and I didn't want us to look like we had made some kind of mistake. But so much. And now I was on board. Now we're rolling. We can get some stuff done.
So how many 50 cals did we have on the team?
2.
And both were deployed that night.
Yes. Correct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So we had the one you had, Keith.
Correct.
And then we had one on top of the bank on the passenger side.
Yes.
That was Webb, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So green light was given. Can y'all describe what we've talked about it before in previous episode during the history and evolution of SWAT, what it means? Can y'all talk about what that is, and what that means for y'all's role at that point?
For us, specifically for the snipers, typically when that authorization is given, and that's what it is, it's a more or less an extension of Chapter 9 for the Penal Code. We are defending others that we may not know about. We are given that authorization based on knowledge that the command post has that they either can't or won't put out over the radio. So it's basically giving us the option, if we choose, and we don't have to, it gives us that option if we choose, that we can engage the suspect at any time that we see them, regardless of what they're doing, how they're doing, whatever. And a good example that I teach my students, my sniper students, is if you're given that green light, that authorization, and you're authorized to shoot this individual the first time you see him. Well, the first time the officer sees him, or the sniper sees him, the guy may be walking out of the front door naked with his hands up. Well, unbeknownst to the sniper, he just told the command post, yeah, I'm going to walk out naked, I'm going to wave at the world, say goodbye, I'm going to turn around, back inside, close the door, and I'm going to kill my family. Well, all that information is either too much, or you can't put all that on radio quick enough that all that can be surmised with, you're given the green light, make this happen. And again, it's still on the operator or the shooter to decide, yes, I'm going to, or no, I'm not. that's still their decision. But it now extends that Chapter 9 from the command post. Yes, we have information that you don't know about yet. This needs to happen as soon as possible. So that, for us, that's what that code means, what that authorization is for.
So in this situation, he could have easily been walking out with some sort of vest.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. He could have been. The fact that the charge went off at headquarters. Now, like I said, everything changed. Our focus is heightened to a razor's edge now. This guy can walk out with a vest bomb. Well, the guy can detonate the truck, because he's given up. He's quit, but he's going to take as many of us with. And not knowing what he had in that vehicle, could have been 10 pounds. It could have been 1,000 pounds. That truck was big enough that it would carry that much.
Well, there was also other information that I believe I read it, that Northeast substation there was an additional bomb placed out there. It ended up being false information, but I think that was what was given out at the time.
Where there's one, there's always two. Where there's two, there's three. And so, I mean, when the first one went off, the idea is, and like, oh wow, that went off. It was like, how many more of these are out there?
Yeah, this guy's prepared. He shows up with an armored vehicle.
Yep. And
attacks the front of headquarters, and it is not uncommon to have multiple actors in different waves of attack. and this guy he had a plan. He clearly put a lot of time and thought into this in preparation. So green light was given, and then y'all's roles changed.
Yes.
Okay. And I'm seeing here at 1:50 after the green, he hung up the phone, and Air One and DPS were notified to fly. They needed to fly higher at this point. What did y'all believe the suspect was trying to do? Y'all believe he was trying to potentially remote into some other bombs that he may have placed?
To me, that's always been the $1 million question. Why did he go down I-45? Did he have another area set up where he would have had access to a lot more energetics, weapon systems? So who knows? Traps, whatever, ambush points. Why did he go that way? I mean, we'll never know. But that was, in the thought process of what are we going to do? What would we have done if that DSO sheriff deputy hadn't spiked his tires? Where was this going to take us? Down what road? And it could have been a lot worse. She did us a tremendous favor because that slowed it down quite a bit, and we went from a very dynamic, still very dangerous situation, but one where we were controlling the timeline now. When he was moving, he's controlling the timeline. It makes it much more difficult.
And he could have led y'all. He possibly could have led y'all into another ambush,
exactly,
drawing y'all into it. Okay. And as far as the level of threat, you said it's an extension of Chapter 9. That's the highest level of threat.
Yes. Yeah, that's using deadly force to protect yourself or someone else. So for us, that is the ultimate authorization. It
that comes from the top.
Correct.
That comes from our chief.
Yeah, 33 years. I've seen it given maybe 5-6 times.
Okay.
It's very rarely given, but when it is, it's extraordinary confrontational situations that we're dealing with before they would even think about letting you have that option.
Yeah, because there's a lot of weight that goes with that decision from the top.
Yep.
Okay. And y'all were just basically at this point concerned with further destruction.
Yes.
You already had one bomb go off, and this guy has already done his damage at headquarters, and he is barricaded inside this armored vehicle. So the threat was there for further destruction.
Yeah, going on a worst case scenario. That's how much can he pack in that vehicle, and how big of a hole in the world can he make?
Yeah, talking about that as far as concern, Jude, you touched on with blast radius. I mean, what kind of y'all at the scene? What was going around at that point? Like as far as okay, how close are we, and is this good enough? And I know Keith, your ass was out in the wind, but how did that look from y'all? Would y'all go into that a little bit more?
For the blast radius, knowing a little bit about explosives, not as much as Jude, but knowing a little bit enough to be dangerous. if we worked worst case scenario that this thing was packed, where myself and Clubber and the rest of the guys that I wound up eventually staying at, we were within 70 yards of the truck. That's well inside not only the fragmentation but also the blast radius for the overpressure. So the shock wave would have hit us. Whatever frag for the vehicle would have come off, we were done. We were probably not going to survive. And again, that's based on worst case scenario. But it was the only place that we could get to have effective view on the vehicle. So what we did initially for myself and Mark is we took turns on the gun. One guy on the gun, the other guy staying behind the building as best they could. We would rotate out every couple of minutes just to give a break to each other. But knowing that if this vehicle does wind up going off, we're in trouble. It's, like I says, we're well within that 100-yard of lethal radius of the frag, and then the shockwave coming through would have probably leveled most of the buildings.
And Keith, at that point, how much training did you have with the 50 cal? Have you been training
since its inception? Yeah, since the beginning.
Okay. I'm reading the timeline here. 145 the green light was given, and then there was further dialogue with Danny mentioned Larry Gordon. He was the negotiator on scene, correct?
Yes, yep.
I'm looking here at 2:15. He hung up the phone, saying he will start shooting in 5 minutes. He basically started giving information about his son and about his own age, and he hung up the phone. There was a lot of back and forth, correct?
Forgot about that. Like every 10 minutes he said, I'm coming out in 5 minutes and we're going to get it on, essentially. So, that would be put out over the radio and the team would just be waiting, and then it just would never happen.
He would just kind of keep saying things, making threats and hanging up and then coming back on.
It's that roller coaster we were on, So it's every time we would get intel from the radio, from Larry, we're like, okay, here we go. And then nothing. And then he'd kind of lull back down, then make another phone call and back up again.
Talking about your adrenaline spiking up.
Yeah.
And back and forth. I mean, it really, over time, it does take the starch out of you. So many adrenaline dumps,
Yeah, up and down and up and down, the unknown. And then, I can't imagine. And then you had this going on. Then you had poor Sergeant Wolverton and the team at headquarters dealing with what they had to deal with.
He's not only deaf and he's tired now.
He's deaf, he's tired, and he apparently is short-handed because all his team went another
Ran
direction.
Off and left him.
Yeah.
We call that abandoning.
Yeah.
Is the statute of limitation for abandonment charges? We still?
I think it's expired. He's good.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's beyond that. So at 2:43, I'm seeing here the suspect actually phones back and notifies Larry that he's been shot 3 times, and he's bleeding and he knows he's going to die soon. That's according to the notes from the phone call. Mm-hmm. At this point, he hasn't really come out and said his full name. I don't believe. I'm reading here, and he did come out in 2:55 and says his name is James, and then he is shot all over and he's bleeding out. He hangs up, and then he starts asking for water, and he believed that could be indication that he was possibly shot in the gut shot.
Yep.
Okay. This kind of seems like it went back and forth. But I'm looking at command post got a call at 4 a.m. A lieutenant in Mesquite advised there's a possible suspect in their city. Did y'all know about that?
We heard words that, like I says, there's intel dumps coming on the radio a lot. So we're hearing possible devices at other substations. Now there's other incidents going on around the Metroplex. I'm like, okay, so we're kind of taking all this in with as much as we can, but half of what we're focusing on is literally right in front of us.
Yeah, we don't even care about Kent Wolverton in headquarters at this point.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's
we're just
pretty much on his own.
Yeah.
In any of these incidents, Fusion Center gets spun up, and of course they're just blanketing everything and pulling out everything in case it could be related, and we need that info. So, in all these incidents, we always get a trickle of information that we have to take with a grain of salt and apply it where we need.
So, Kit, this is closing in on 4 a.m. You already had one bomb go off up there. And what kind of how did that look for you at that point? If you can remember what you were doing after you, how long did it take to clear that HQ?
Forever. It really felt like we were just constantly trying to maneuver through headquarters and make sure that we didn't miss spots, account for everybody that was supposed to be in there. But the biggest deal was we knew that they had something going on over on their side. So that part was frustrating, to be stuck at headquarters knowing that at that point we didn't have anything. But the people that you work with every day are still out in another situation, and everybody there was willing to jump in the truck and head down, but we were told, hey, go ahead and stand by just in case something else pops off somewhere else. So the one thing I remember is the Red Cross guys showed up with the food truck, and we grabbed a couple expired Little Debbie snacks from there and just kind of waited until we got the word.
Back at the scene at Hutchins, did y'all get any of those 99-cent tacos from Jack in the Box? Were those offered at all?
No, well, skipping ahead. No. No, we did not. But skipping ahead, so many hours later, Nick and Sam's actually brought catered food out.
Really?
Yeah. I remember kind of sitting there waiting for an evac, and by then Dallas had woken up the next morning and saw the news, and it was still ongoing. And Nick and Sam's delivered food out there to us while we were still doing with the post incident.
Shout out Nick and Sam's; they're very good to us, and and Kent knows them very well. It's a local restaurant here, and they're very good to our Dallas officers.
Yep.
So there's a lot of phone going back and forth volleys going back between Larry and the suspect at this point. And I'm looking here at 4:30. There was a shot to take out the engine. How did that go? And Keith, was that you?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can you describe that?
After I got my hide sight, my position on top of the roof.
Okay,
that's where I wound up staying the whole time. I actually had Scott McDonald was kind of my anchor, because the roof was a piece of garbage. The whole building pretty much was. If we moved too much, it was pretty much going to cave in on itself. But the shingles were all deteriorating, so it was like trying to stand on ice. So I had Scott basically hanging onto my feet, keeping me from sliding down the roof. The big issue that we had was there was only one magazine for the rifle. I had the AP rounds in the rifle. Eventually, Mark Paggy retrieved the ARF rounds, the compressed copper rounds, and we kind of worked out a tag team between myself and Clubber. Mark wanted to try the 308 through the through the radiator to see if that would to shut it off. We knew it was probably a low probability, but wanted to try it anyway. So once the authorization was to kill the engine, make the vehicle stop running to make it more uncomfortable for him, we worked out, again, because there's only one magazine for this and it's a magazine-fed rifle, I loaded it up, kind of staggering the rounds. I had the armor piercing with the intention that if I saw the suspect, I was going to engage him through the windshield or wherever he was. And I wanted to do that with an AP round to go through the armored vehicle. The next subsequent rounds, 3 more after that, were the anti-ricochet rounds, the compressed copper rounds. And then the bottom rounds after that were all AP rounds. So working out the mechanics in my head, I says, all right, so I communicated with Clubber. I says, you engage the 3 rounds. Once you're done, I'm going to watch, see if I get any response from inside the cab. If I don't, I'll rack that 1 AP round out, and that'll give me the next 3 rounds will be the rounds that I will shoot through the hood with the intention of killing the engine with the 50 at that point. So that worked out. I got it set, gave Clubber the thumbs up, said, I'm ready, on you. So he sent the 3 rounds, which, again, didn't do anything. I mean, it didn't even make the truck hiccup. I got 0 reaction from inside. I waited for a short minute, maybe a minute and a half. Nothing. So I told Scotty, he says, all right, I'm going to start taking the engine now.
So when you said you see nothing, how much could you see into that van? Because you were positioned where you could see through the front windshield.
Yes. Yeah.
And obviously it's at night, and there might be some street lights, and that might cause glare. But what was the depth you think you could see into the van?
At that point, looking from an elevated position, I could only see basically into the seats. I couldn't see anything into the back of the cab. And I had it turns out I had a really good line of sight from my elevated position, but because of the shadows of the street lights and then the backlighting of everything else, the depth of penetration into the vehicle for vision was at best the front seats. I couldn't see anything into the cab.
And you said you were about 70 yards out?
I was actually at 50 right on the button, right on the roof line. Clubber was still at the 70, 72 yards, somewhere in there. But after Mark shot the radiator, trying to shut it off, nothing. Like I said, didn't even hiccup. I cleared the AP round out, and I told Scotty, he says, hang on, we'll shoot the engine now. Let the command post know. He says, all right, rounds out. So I put 3 rounds into the hood, trying to spread it out. The whole point of using the anti-ricochet rounds, based on my angle, if I had shot the AP rounds, I knew where the APC was on the driver's side. My concern was if one of the AP rounds, which is a penetrator round, if that goes through the hood and catches a weird angle on the engine, it can go through the fender and still have enough steam coming out to possibly hurt one of my guys on the other side of the parking lot. I don't want to take that chance. So that's when the ARF rounds the anti-ricochet rounds were the perfect choice. Basically going through the hood, I knew it would penetrate the hood, even if it was lightly armored. It's designed to basically rip apart everything on the hood or the top of the engine. So all the lifeblood of the engine, the electronics, the fuel rails, the air breathers, everything that runs the engine's on top. Well, those ARF rounds are going to just decimate it. So after the first round, and caveat to all this, because I grabbed my assault gear and not my sniper gear, I had a single coil ear in my left ear for my radio. I didn't have anything in my right. Normally, I carry a set of foamy ears in my gear. This was my rapid assault gear. It wasn't my heavy siege armor. So my right ear was naked. So I told Scott, after this first round, if you need me for anything to either stop shooting or you see something that I don't yell at me because I won't hear you. You got to grab my leg and get my attention because I'm going to be deaf. And he's like, okay, can I do anything? I says, nope, just hang on. So I knew after that first round I was going to be hurting for hearing. I've shot the 50 enough, thousands of rounds through those guns. They're easy to shoot. The one drawback is they are louder than hell.
They will rock you.
Yes, they will.
Not just the sound, but the
energy.
The baffles are designed to take about 60 to 70% of the recoil away from the gun, so the shooter can actually shoot the gun without breaking a shoulder. All that sound is directed back to the shooter. That's the drawback. It's kind of a thumpy gun to shoot. It's not uncomfortable, but it does have a pretty sizable push when the gun goes off. So, again, I told Scott, I says, you need me, grab my calf, let me know. Other than that, I'm not going to hear shit. So he says, all right, on you. So set the first round off, and he said after that first round, the engine started to scream. Well, of course, I can't hear it at this point, so I'm like, okay, I got 2 more rounds in this gun, so I might as well clean them up and go right back to the AP rounds. So I spread it out as best I could, keeping it to where I thought the engine was going to be, knowing a little bit of the layout of the vehicle. So I put the 3 rounds in kind of a weird pattern on the hood. And he says after that second round, the engine pretty much stopped, and I just pumped the 3rd round into it just to finish it off. He says, but after that second round, it was pretty much the coup de grace to finish the engine off. It screamed and made a last wail, and it was done. It shut itself off.
A tiny white flag came out from underneath the hood and started waving.
Yes, please stop shooting me.
Yes.
Yeah. It didn't last long.
Okay. So was Larry on the phone at that point with the suspect? Do you know?
I don't know if he was on the phone at the time that I did the shooting.
Okay.
Shooting the engine. But I believe he either called or he called back directly after because he made a comment to Larry. He says, "You just killed my engine," or something to that nature.
Well, that's the point.
Yeah. So it's
and he also said something to the fact of, "Why you idiots shooting at me? You know I got explosives in here." So that was the thing. But I want to go back a track just a second.
Yeah, please do.
I want to say kudos to Keith for not only making the sniper cocktail. I mean, you talk about his situation awareness when he's describing that. I mean, that is some fine work that he did there, and I'm very proud of it.
He was trained well.
Yeah, I can't say that, but he represented real well in this one.
Well, I was thinking about that. He come up with that plan on the fly to stagger those rounds.
Or just even being aware, like, hey, I'm going to be deaf, so get my attention. Like, let me know if there's some kind of reaction from the van or this shooter, and you have to get my attention by physically getting a hold of me.
That's not just something Keith made up on the fly either, though. That's something Keith has thought about for probably 15 years. I promise you, the SWAT guys get a bad reputation of guys that just work out and break stuff, but they're very, very meticulous. They think about all of these situations constantly. It's literally a conversation in the APC on the way anywhere is how you're going to defeat whatever. And I randomly just come up to the office still and ask them random questions about, hey, how would you do this? And within 15 minutes, they've got like 3 different solutions that are all viable and probably 15 that aren't. But that's the way their mind works, and they're really, it's unknown how much they actually discuss the things that they do and how much thought they put into the things that they do, and their level of knowledge of everything that goes into what they do. So like even the van, like he's saying, I kind of had an understanding of the layout of the engine. Yeah, I mean, he probably Googled it and looked at, well, this van looks to be about a 96 or 95. Let's look at what the engine layout looks like, and I promise you, those guys are not just a bunch of meatheads that like to break stuff.
All right, we're continuing down this timeline. You took out the engine, and we're creeping up on 5 a.m.
Yep.
5:03. This time you're on the windshield. You're looking for an opportunity. Green light's been given. Can you kind of just walk us through at 5:03 what you saw and what you did?
Sure. After taking the engine out, obviously the next round coming through the magazine was the AP round, with the intention that if I had to engage him, I could. So staying on the glass the whole time, constantly in and out of the focus or in and out of the power setting, so I could scrutinize the truck as best I could. Obviously the light's starting to come into effect for us. So I'm starting to think all that sniper stuff of I'm on a roof line, I'm silhouetted, the sun's coming up, he's going to be looking right into my face, everything's going to be reflecting off my glass with the sun coming up out of the east. Now, it's nothing's good from my side of it. So constantly adjusting the power, trying to look at every little part of the truck, running through that mental game of what did I see? Is that the same thing I saw last time? Did anything change inside? And about that time, I don't remember how many minutes it was after the last round I shot, that I caught movement out of the corner of the glass, well, the edge of the window. And the way the layout was, both windshields, there were 2. Instead of one solid windshield, there was a split in the middle. So you had the driver's side windshield and the passenger side windshield. My perspective is I was looking through the passenger side window, front windshield. I caught movement at the bottom, as I'm looking at it, the bottom left, so almost like the passenger seat. Just a real quick flash. I'm like, what the hell was that? Of course, I'm saying that to myself. I'm probably saying it out loud, but I'm saying it to myself. So I immediately switch my focus over, and I'm looking at that, and that's when I caught just a little, I call it the whack-a-mole. It's that little flash of the top of his head is what it turned out to be. At the time, I didn't know what it was because it was just happening so fast. First flash caught my eye. I swung over to it. Working the power, I saw it again. It was a little higher this time. I'm like, is that him? What the hell is that? Of course, my eyes are starting to play tricks on me because I've been on the glass for the last 4.5 hours. So constantly looking through a magnified optic with one eye and nothing with the other eye, your mind starts playing little games with you. Kind of crushing headache because I can't focus. But like I says, I saw that first movement, focused in on it. Second movement, I'm like, damn, I think that's him. And about that time I got the magnification set up. Sure enough, his whole face came straight up over the dashboard, looking out the window, and then he was gone again. It was just a half a heartbeat. It was just a flash. And it was enough that I saw him. I saw his face for the first time. And I was upset with myself because I lost that opportunity. It's the first time I'd seen him all night. The green light was out there. It was already authorized. I had the opportunity and I missed it. And I was cussing myself left and right. I'm yelling at myself. Scotty's like, dude, calm down. Relax. It's not over yet. Just stay there. So he was kind of my calming force in the background, just keeping me focused. Once I got established, and this is okay, this is my last place I saw him. So I cranked up the power just a little bit more, and I put my crosshairs on that section. So if I saw him again, I was going to take the shot. This is probably 5 o'clock on the button. So it's not long in real minutes, but it was an eternity in my mind. So maybe a minute or two go by, and I start seeing more movement, but it's deeper into the truck. Again, now the light's starting to come up. We're getting just a little bit of ambient light, not much, but I picked up movement deeper behind the driver's seat, which I had not seen at all the whole time I was up on the roof. Started to scrutinize that a little bit more, and as I powered up, I'm like, oh my God, that's him. I'm looking at his whole upper half of his silhouette. So basically, I could see him from about hip up to the top of his head. And the way he was positioned, he was on the bench seat behind the driver's side. Unbeknownst to me, there was a partition behind the driver's seat. It was a steel wall that goes about halfway up the driver's seat, height-wise. And then from that point on, it was that real thick, heavy corrugated mesh, almost like a decorative, like weave, basket weave, almost. But that was the partition that I was actually looking partially through that. I never saw it because it was still dark enough.
So you're still in the dark. You're looking through darkness and different photonic barriers, through the front windshield, and then through the corrugated mesh.
Yes.
Damn.
Yes. So, again, not knowing what I wasn't looking at, I could see him. And I had enough mental history of the truck at this point that any movement inside I knew wasn't normal. It wasn't what I'd seen before. And again, going back to my sniper training, that's part of those Kim's games that we teach each other. It's keeping memory sniper or keeping memory stupid. It's a memory game that you don't have time to write everything down, but you do have time to remember it and look at it. And you can scrutinize it in the back of your mind. So when I picked up that movement deep in the truck, I'm like, that's him. It can't be anything else, but it's him. And turns out the movement that I saw was actually his arm. He was bladed slightly away from the windshield. He was looking out the driver's side porthole window behind the driver's seat. So he was almost like a 45-degree angle to me. So I was looking at his right shoulder through that window, through the passenger window. Once I figured out, all right, that's him. I know it's him. I've got him in the sights. I can see him literally from the top of his head to his hip and shoulder to shoulder with kind of a weird bladed angle. And that's when I told Scotty, I says, stand by. Well, to me, I sounded all cool, calm, and collected in my head. That's not what I sounded like in reality. Scotty was like, you sounded like a 3-year-old schoolgirl the first time you said that. I was slightly excited, knowing what I was about to get ready to do. I said it again because I was still figuring out where I wanted to place my shot. And while I'm running all this through my head at Mach 2, the two primary instructors that ring true in my head were my first sniper instructors. And no, it wasn't Jude yet. But Jude was my teammate at that point. Tony Black and Bob Newton were my two primary first sniper instructors. And the one thing they always harped on was, don't be greedy. Quarter up your target, shoot center of mass. whatever it is that you can see, shoot center of mass. Don't get greedy and take that perfect sniper shot for the head.
That sexy movie shot.
Yeah, the sexy movie stuff, which is bullshit. It doesn't work, all right? Too many things can go wrong. Take your time, make your shot count, but take the biggest piece that you can see, which happens to be his chest. Thank God I did. I quartered him up, and my crosshairs actually wound up falling just below his nipple line on his chest. So it squared up everything that I could see. And I told Scotty, stand by. Well, that last standby, Scott knew I was serious because he said my voice dropped about 4 octaves. It was nice and calm and relaxed. Took the safety off, did my breathing, sent the round. I don't remember the gun going off. I don't remember the recoil. I don't remember any of it. I remember watching the glass explode, watching everything through the scope. Get that little white blast from where the glass detonated in the hole. And I'm like, oh, crap, I lost sight of him. So I shift my crosshairs and my gaze over. I can't see him anymore. Wait a minute, why can't I see him? He should be sitting right there. So then I start to panic. Fuck, I missed. How the hell did I miss? I couldn't have missed. He was right there. He's 50 yards away from me. And I start the second guessing. What the hell did I do wrong? And I'm saying this to myself, but I'm actually saying it out loud. And Scotty's right behind me. He grabs me by the calf. Said, calm down. You're not done yet. Okay. All right. And I'm like, he's not there. He's not there anymore. He goes, did you do everything right? Yeah. Was he in your crosshairs when you pressed the trigger? Yeah. Did you jerk the trigger? No. Then you did everything right. Right. Then you hit him. But I don't see him. And there was that disconnect in my head that I forgot the power of that gun. It's not a normal sniper rifle. It's designed as an anti-materiel rifle. But it's super powerful. It will relocate whatever you were shooting at. And that's what it did. Turns out, my point of aim was not my point of impact. Where I aimed, I actually hit him 18 inches high because it went through the glass. So I knew there was going to be some deflection from the glass. We've shot enough of that. I didn't take into account any other barriers between the glass and him. I just thought it was open air. Well, it turns out the round, when it goes through, it strips off the copper jacket, and the tungsten penetrator continues on and does the damage. Well, that went through that second barrier, and when it did, it deflected it even higher. So the round that actually, where I was aiming, here, actually hit him here.
Which you're pointing straight into the cranial.
It hit him just below his eye, as best we can.
So you were aiming...
Yeah, I was aiming just around his mid-chest line, just below his nipple.
Below the nipple line. And he ended up...
And the impact was approximately 18 inches high. So
centered in the cranial.
It hit him just somewhere in the head. If I'd have been aiming at his head, I would have missed. So, again, that goes back to my initial schooling of my first sniper. Don't be greedy. Quarter it up, shoot center mass. If you have to, you can always shoot again, but don't get greedy. And for whatever the reason, that stuck in my head. When I'm working through all that math in my skull, angle of the glass, the deflection of the round, where I can expect it to go, if I can at all, the round that I'm shooting, the gun, the positioning, my breathing, all that fun stuff that you teach these young snipers, all that was finally running through my head. And it did it, in literally a flash of a second, but it was a individual step that I was thinking about.
Slack, what degree angle you think you were at? 4 or 5%?
From the roof line?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably.
4 or 5%. Okay. So when it went through that 13/16, it got off its center axis and started to yaw, and it tumbled like a Chinese dart. And the reason we know that is because afterwards on the mesh, the tungsten penetrator was on a vertical position with the tip of the tungsten at 12 o'clock. So if any doubts about why you would need a 50, or there's another weapon system in the inventory that could accomplish the mission like that did. So that was validation after, 12 years of
fighting for it.
Yeah, fighting for it and trying to get it and validate it. Because I don't know how many commanders I had told us, you guys will never use that in the city of Dallas as long as I'm sitting in this chair. So those kind of battles. But it's all in the preparation. It's kind of like how you prepare the seabed for planning. We did a lot of testing. We knew what the capabilities were. Had the right ammunition for the right deal, and we had the right person behind the gun, which is probably the most important thing.
It's better to have and not need.
Exactly. Right.
Threat neutralized. I want to talk about the significance of using that weapons platform in law enforcement in the history. Is that the first time that?
As far as we're aware, that is the first time that weapon system was used by a law enforcement sniper or law enforcement personnel.
Still is only the first time. It hasn't happened. So there have been other teams across the country that have used the 50 cal, but it has been for its original intent, which is anti-material, so taking out vehicles.
I think the last one that I'm aware of was in Ohio. A SWAT sergeant took out a tractor trailer. I believe it was stolen. Had been running through town, raising all kind of hell. So they used that. A couple rounds, defeated the engine. Chase was over.
So after you accomplished that mission, then you had to take the steps to make sure that 100% that it was done, and then also there was no more threats.
Right.
How did that? What happened next after that?
After the initial shooting, and figured out that I probably did hit him. We still hadn't confirmed it yet. At that point, I think they tried calling back several times.
Getting the voicemail.
Yeah, they kept going to voicemail. There was no reaction from inside the vehicle. Bear in mind, up to that point, we never saw any movement. The truck wasn't moving, even though the guy was talking to Larry. I never saw the truck rock back and forth. Never saw any kind of ambient light or anything inside. So wherever he was, and I'm guessing he was probably on the floor most of the time, or crawling around in the back of the cab, well out of our line of sight, using the shadows to his advantage. Up to that point, the truck never moved. We never saw anything until that one little incident with the whack-a-mole and then the movement in the back. After that, we clearly didn't see anything. But the sun was now coming up pretty good. At that point, Webb was up on top of the bank, and the CP was asking, does he see anything? And he made a comment about there's something on the windows. Again, still too dark, but the windows seem off. Turns out we believe it was a blood splatter from the inside. So clearly I hit him. But again, without being able to see him, there was no confirmation at that point. So we stayed on the glass, both of us, Webb and I, just to confirm until the sun truly came back up and we could send in robots and actually have a good look. Did we try a helicopter flying by with lights?
Yeah, I see here.
It did the DPS.
Right. So we tried lighting it up a little bit. Still nothing. They tried the thermals, the FLIR. Couldn't get any read inside. So until the sun truly came up, we all stayed in place and didn't move.
And I'm reading here that at 5:40 a.m., 40 minutes after you took the shot, that a robot approached the vehicle.
Yes.
And it observed the suspect inside the vehicle, and it says in fetal position.
Right.
And was that Jeremy driving the robot, or was that someone else's robot who had come out?
That was a little Andros 200.
Okay.
That we had that the ATF let us borrow.
Johnny 5.
Yeah. Johnny 5, Jack Rabowski and those guys. Jack's former DPD was super guy, always couldn't do enough to help us out.
Yeah. I remember Jeremy driving it, I believe.
It could have been Jeremy.
I
thought it was you.
Initially I started putting it together, okay. And then I think I got a video of Jeremy driving it, perhaps, okay. And you in the back of the APC stringing some explosives together to do something else later.
Mm-hmm.
The robot kind of verifies, the missions that mission's accomplished. Now you have to you still have a threat of the vehicle and potential, additional bombs. So what happened after that, as far as like how y'all handled that vehicle, knowing that he was neutralized?
Yeah, I remember I got my old buddy Marine One back on my flip phone, and I said, "Hey, boss."
So yeah, just so people know, you're throwing this out. It's even throwing off guests. So Jude has this thing of coming up with his own nicknames for everyone. So if you've heard Slacker, he's talking about Keith, who's sitting right next to him. But Marine One is not a command center. Marine One is a former SWAT lieutenant who was in the Marines. So Marine One. Yeah. Carry on.
So I told Marine One, I said, look, why don't we take the robot and we can knock out one of these rear windows and we kind of get a little foothold in there. We're not going to penetrate. We're not running anything safe. That's bomb squad. We just want to put a window in there so we can put some kind of maybe electronics or something. We didn't have drones at this time or anything like that. And he's like, no, we're going to wait on bomb squad. And they were finishing up downtown at this time. And also at the time, we're getting more and more help to the scene from the federal guys and also some of the local bomb squads in the area, like DFW, I think Mesquite, Arlington. Some of the other guys are coming in with all their equipment because I believe one of our robots was damaged downtown when the device went off. So we're still kind of waiting. I'm not sure quite on the timeline, maybe 7 or so before our EOD actually gets on the scene.
So once EOD got on the scene, so did they totally take over the van at that point?
Right. They are taking care of it. I did talk to the bomb squad commander, a couple things that we kind of fill them in what we knew at the time that we thought was pertinent, and we talked about what they could do. There was a orange bucket in the right front seat that had some, I would call them like precursors, smokeless powder, other stuff in there. And they wanted to, get at that pretty quick. So I remember Little Wayne actually made a charge to take out the side window. And we had a couple events that happened before that. But once he took out the window, that kind of got the ball rolling as far as the render safe on the vehicle.
FBI SWAT showed up at some point during this?
The head of the bomb squads in Metroplex is run basically by the FBI, and the head guy got there, and I think old Tom had been at his deer lease, and he got there, and he decided, what we were going to do, and it continued on with trying to breach the vehicle to get inside there.
All the houses on Palestine Street were cleared out at this point.
Yes, sir.
So I've actually seen the video of the detonation. Can you kind of talk about that, what y'all know of it, of how that came about, or what you can talk about?
Sure. So I think before that, we actually had our old buddy Webb got to do a little trigger work on the front windshield. They wanted to get see if we can get one of the claws on like an Andro 6 up there, if they could pull one of the windshields out. And so we did a little bit of work along the edge on the glass. I think Webb core shot probably 7 rounds. And I'll never forget, I had to go across the where the command post is set up, and Chief Cato was there and Marine One was there. So I'm like the flunky going in between. There were some concerns about RFE energy in the area, not knowing. So I was like a little runner. I went over there and I said, "Sir, requesting we shoot the 50 to disable the glass." And they both looked at me like I just landed from Mars, like, what kind of baloney you throwing out here? And finally, we talked about it, and they said, "Oh, all right, go ahead." So I went up there, and we accomplished that. And then in progression of stripping the van down, by this time, I look around, man, all my Confederates are gone. I'm like, what the hell? Where's all the SWAT cats? This is when Daniel's talking about Sam.
Nick and Sam's
on
Service Road.
They're up there.
Taking our gear off.
And I'm like, son of a gun, why is the old man out here walking around doing all this? So we're going on, and then I see Tom from the FBI. he's got some M112 blocks laid out. And I'm like, hey, Tom, what's the intent? And he tells me what we're going to do. I said, okay. So now I got
M112 blocks being what?
Each one's a 1.25 pound of composition C4, high explosive, military grade explosive. So I get the gist of what Tom wants. I got to go back over, and I'm trying not to laugh, but I see Marine 1 and Cato, and they're like, oh, man, it was this clown what this time, you know.
Requesting to blow up the van, sir.
Yeah, so I tell Marine 1, I said, sir, per FBI authority, they're requesting a couple M112 blocks.
I could just see Jude raising his hand and saying, hey, I hereby solemnly swear to be an FBI agent for the next 15 minutes so I can get this done.
Well, the backstory was, you know, Marine 1 had been in the engineers, and he did a lot of work in Iraq with, like, 82 Russian millimeter mortars, you know, blowing up 50, 100 blocks at a time. And he used to always tease me, say, you'll never use one in the city of Dallas in your career. So I was over there like the Cheshire Cat smiling because now we'll get a chance to play with two of them. And I think they were just like, this guy is just out of control. So they just said, yeah, go ahead. So I went back there, and then they set it up, and they sent off 2.5 pounds, and I was pretty impressed with the durability of that Ford van because it pushed in the sheet metal a couple inches, but it really didn't do a whole lot of that. But I didn't really quite understand what Tom had, what his initial intent was. There was a little discrepancy there. But after that, I don't know, timeline is probably around 10 o'clock. And I remember going back, walking up a few hundred yards to all my boys are, and Slack takes one look at me and goes, sit down. He gives me a Gatorade. I was about ready to fall out. I'm not going to lie. I was pretty worked over. You know, you're in that hot vest for quite a long time. And then, you know, we went back up there, and that was it.
So you were kind of notorious for, number one, never having a radio. So I'm questioning, True. Did you actually have a radio to go back and forth, or was that necessity, and then you just came up with, we were worried about RF?
Yeah. Normally, that would be a Judaism, but this time, actually, Marine 1 said, hey, don't use your radio, just come back and forth. So, you know, hey, an old man like me, I was wore out.
So there was an explosion at the vehicle, mm-hmm. And then at what point did y'all just render it, that location just, it was safe and secure?
Well, everybody thinks that the 2.5 pounds of composition C4 caught the van on fire, and that's not the case at all. It pushed it in a little bit, came back, and at that time, Tom decided that the FBI came there with an MRAP, and they had a big log chain, and we were going to start pulling the doors off with our newer APC, and I had Brandon and Jeremy out there with me. Now, I felt bad because I was I'm in the armor driving, and these poor guys are out there, and Little Wayne is standing by. He's going to go in, and he's going to render safe whatever he has inside. And we did pull one of the side doors off, and Wayne got in there, and he was actually able to render safe 2 pipe bombs. And when he was in the act of doing the third one, what they had used had sprinkled powder through the air, and then when the third one ignited, it caught the whole van on fire. So we all backed out of there, and I remember DFW bomb squad thought there was like probably another 3 or 4 devices went off. I know I heard 2 pretty good booms. Mm-hmm. I remember I talked to Wayne about a month ago, and he said that there were 2 pipe bombs right next to where the subject landed. So it's probably, looking back at it, he could have been working on one when Slacker spotted him. But there was enough precursors and stuff in there that, and you have to remember that his technology was probably some of the most advanced that ever been deployed in the continental United States up to this time. I mean, this is stuff that was going off in Iraq and Afghanistan. But I said earlier, he made just one minor mistake on his hardwire, and if he hadn't done that, he would have been a much, much tougher out.
Yeah, he'd have accomplished a lot more than, and you know, this whole thing's tragic.
Yeah.
Starting from his 2013 arrest and offenses against his family, and it turned into 2 years later. And I've heard his family talk about this on news stories, that he has battled mental illness for a long time, and then this exacerbated it, and it set him on a path of just tragedy for himself, and he almost accomplished a lot more terror on the city. He had a great plan. It just did not. His execution of it didn't work to what he planned.
Yep. Couple of things didn't go his way, and it worked out okay for us. Not so good for him, but it was not the easiest call we've ever been on. Quickly became one of the scariest, with the potential to be even more scary, more devastating. Like he says, the fates worked in our favor, and it was just like Jude said, a couple little things that didn't work the way he planned. If they had, we'd be having a different conversation today.
Yeah, he had a hell of a plan. It just it didn't work out.
Right.
Taking of a life is, you're a SWAT operator, you're a sniper, and you just kind of walked us through that entire process of what you had to do to accomplish your mission of executing green light when you had a chance.
Mm-hmm.
Listeners out there that are non-first responders, non-police, and none of us want to have to do that.
Right.
And that is something you're going to have to carry forever because of these actions that laid out on June 13th, 2015.
Right. I have kind of a mindset that I did not want to let anything ever happen to my guys. I'd rather it happen to me first, or me only. I don't ever want to have to go and explain to my buddies' families, my buddies' wives and husbands, that I got them hurt or, God forbid, killed because I didn't do my job. I didn't do something when I could have. In my mind, I was never going to let that happen, ever, and I'm still not going to. Whatever I have to do to get that job done, I'm prepared to do that and prepared to deal with the consequences in the afterlife. Chris Kyle said it one of the best ways. I'm prepared to go in front of God, and this is, I accept what I did. This is my job. I'm not ashamed of it. It's tough to deal with, but I wouldn't change it because I'm not going to let the guy hurt my guys. It's not going to happen.
We never picked the time, the place, or how any of this stuff is going to evolve. We just respond to it. You can train and train and train, and it's not the same. But when you get on these hot deals like this, I'm telling you, this cat had unbelievable repertoire of possible skills that he could have done. And when you look back about how nobody was injured or killed, it's unbelievable.
It's a miracle.
It really is. He had planned for everything except one thing he didn't plan for. 5-0. That was the only thing he didn't plan for. And that's what got us through on that day.
It's probably one of the first times, well, one of the second times, I guess, that we've ever actually had a piece of equipment and the training and the plan already in place before it was needed. It wasn't a reaction. We'd already planned on something, not like this, but something to this nature occurring. To have something in our arsenal that we can defeat or use to defeat that incident. It was a lot of hard work to get to that point. A lot of sweating and a lot of arguing and yelling and say, this is why we have to have this. And that's, like I says, this is one of the few incidents that we actually had a piece of equipment and a piece of training ready to go before it was actually needed.
And again, it's better to have and not need.
Yep, absolutely.
All right, guys, we literally have gone through several hours of a step-by-step breakdown of this entire day. And after it's all over, everybody went home at night. What are some final takeaways we can leave the listener with?
Okay, when I look at this operation, I think you look what a really nice job Patrol did getting them down there. The deputy from DSO, she did us a tremendous favor. I'm sorry. Tremendous favor. We're getting this guy going from a fluid to a static position. And then I think we did a great job up to Keith's representation. Now, where we were not probably, as Steve would say, industry standard was the RSP on our part. Some things that we need to shore up would have been how we approached the vehicle for the final when we were working with the other agencies. There's some things that we could have done better. And that would be, I believe, would be our biggest takeaway from that. And then also, I think that the preconditioning on this incident helped us a little bit more on the 7/7 incident tragedy that happened a year later.
You mean just with this incident being in the back of the mind and what we need to be doing better in dealing with these?
Right. We be aware of secondary devices, people that have switches or could set something off with a cell phone, and X claimed that he had devices all over at the school there as well. So I think we got some preconditioning here that probably helped us out in the long run or in the other operation. Just the RSP stuff needed to be cleaned up, and some of it had to be with our relationship with the bomb squad is so much better now. Once we got the bomb techs in the fold with us, instead of having two separating identities, and now that we got Little Wayne and Red, and I don't even know the other guy. But they're
I just know his nickname. Just call him Dirt.
Dirt. All right. What they're on. They go out on all the operations now, and that gives you a force multiplier having a bomb tech there with you. So that's it's kind of like the SWAT doctors. Is a big leap in the timeline here as we go forward.
I think for us, it keeps those oddities in your mind. It doesn't. This is before this time. We've never dealt with explosives, really, from a bad guy's point of view. We've done a little bit of it in training just to kind of get the guys something to think about, but they've never seen it in real life. It's not like we're European law enforcement where you deal with explosives a lot or automatic weapons. It's we deal with guns and drugs. That's our bread and butter. Dealing with bombs, that's something all again different for us. The unfortunate fact that 7/7 happened nearly a year later, it was still in the forefront of everybody's thoughts. I know I got a shooter running around, but did this guy drop devices? Has he been planning this? So it gives the guys something else to start thinking about, or at least keeping in their mind. They don't get as complacent as they used to be, which is a big thing. So even now today, when we put on training for the young guys, SWAT guys, just to keep them on their toes, we'll put a device out, see if they recognize it, see if they pick it up. You didn't see that? Oh, okay. All right. Well, this is what you need to look for. Oh, okay. And then we'll tell them why. Oh, shit. Okay. Well, that makes sense now. So then they put it in context, so they can get a better frame of reference. Why are we doing this? Why is this so dangerous? It's easy to set up. For a bad guy's point of view, if they're really that true 1%er like this guy was, it can be a really bad day if you don't do your job properly.
Iron sharpens iron.
Yep.
And hopefully learn from mistakes or anything can be done better.
Correct.
And the last thing I want to say, I want to give a shout out to all our federal brothers, all the help from the FBI guys, ATF, and we had a briefing probably 8 months later that ATF gave, and how they were able to recreate the incident from every phone call, all the way down the line. It was tremendous. It was quite impressive how they were able to get everything put into the timeline of how it happened.
Guys, I think that's a perfect way to wrap it up. I want to thank Danny, Kent for being a part of this. Keith, Jude, you are amazing. Thank you for your service.
You're welcome.
We have an active shooter with a high-power rifle at the front of the I have a 50 cal ready. We're on the north side here by the bank.